All right, back again. Another solo episode. 30-something, 35 most likely. We'll see. We'll see. I know I've done this a few times lately, but I just want to take the time to say thank you all. The listenership of these has gone up quite a lot recently, and yeah, I have all you guys to thank. I really appreciate the positive feedback. I appreciate the topic suggestions. I encourage you to message me. I encourage you to let me know you're enjoying it, getting value out of it. Whatever it is, I don't do the solo podcast to sell you anything. I never advertise anything on these. We don't do that on the main page, the main podcast either. This really is for the love of it and for information sharing. So I don't really ask anything. However, if you are enjoying it, the best way that you can share the love as well is to share this with other people. So if you know any coaches or lifters that might benefit from this kind of information, feel free to share it. Feel free to chuck it on your story and to tag me and to tag Zero. And of course, reviews help a lot. So on Spotify, if you're listening there, you can chuck a review. Just hit the 5-star button. You don't even have to write a caption with it. But thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it. Anyway, enough about that. Let's get to the topic. Dumb rules in powerlifting. I eventually want to make a funny Instagram series on this and probably will when I make time for it. I was going to say something less appropriate. There are a lot of dumb rules in powerlifting, and I feel like I'm qualified to talk about this. And the reason being is for those who are not aware of my involvement with the APL here, my official role at the APL is the technical chair. That's the rules guy. I write the rule book. I modify the rule book when it needs to be modified. And I teach referees. I created the referee course. I upskill referees. I sign them off to the next level of refereeship, or whatever it's called. So I've been through every rule book. I've also been an international referee with GPC, an international referee with the IPF. I've been a referee at most major federations at least a national level, especially the ones that we have locally here in Australia. And I've been doing it for an awful long time. So rules refereeing is something that I've always felt quite passionate about because it maintains the integrity of the sport. It's about creating a consistent experience for lifters. However, humans run refereeing, and the general training style of referees in powerlifting and how people progress through refereeing is pretty flawed. We're slowly changing that with APL, and it's a very long and arduous task. But outside of that, the whole point of that little thing was to say, as part of, so for history, we were part of the IPL, so we used their rule book, and then we eventually broke off and Daniel broke off from the APL and has essentially just started his own thing using that as a basis. So my job was to go through the rule book and change it to suit us, basically. That involved going through basically every other rule book as well, whether it's IPF, WPC, GPA, GPO, GPC, all the GPs. Because when you look at rulebooks in powerlifting across the board, they're essentially a copy and paste of the IPF rulebook with changes made to suit that federation. The problem with a lot of federations is that the copy and paste is of the IPF rulebook from like 10 years ago and hasn't ever really been updated with the things that the IPF has changed along the way. Now, the IPF rulebook is very far from perfect. Let me promise you that. And what we're going to see as we go through this is that powerlifting rulebooks are really reflective of the people running it, which is typically old white men that don't really compete in powerlifting. But anyway, the thing I hate the most about powerlifting rulebooks, and I'm sure a lot of you feel the same, is that there's a lot of rules that don't actually clarify what they're meant to be. And so it leaves it up to referee interpretation, which then often gets misinterpreted or butchered, which creates inconsistency. So although this example didn't make my list, I'm going to throw it out there now. An example of this is controlling the bar to the floor on deadlifts. So originally in the IPF rulebook, the rule was to show control to the bar, and it wasn't clarified what that meant. So a later addition to that rulebook was that they put the term IE, which is essentially say, that is to say, maintaining contact with the hands on the bar to the floor, or something to that effect. It clarified that control only specifically means keeping the hands on the bar till it hits the floor. The problem is that addition wasn't added to a lot of the other federation rulebooks. It just said control to the floor. And then so for years, you dealt with referees who would red light you if the bar was a little bit too loud when it made contact with the floor for their liking. And it's like, everyone knows. Putting a max weight down quietly is difficult to begin with. And the stronger you are and the more weight you lift, the more difficult it is. Like, put 400 kilos down silently. It's not easy and it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter if you put the bar down fast. It's not like it stopped your ability to pick it up. If you lost control and you let go of the bar, that's a different story. If your grip slipped, you lost control, that's a different story. You weren't able to complete the lift. But there's a lot of rules like this that exist that either haven't been clarified and fixed from the olden days, or are just reffed with such an open end that they may as well not be rules. The other thing I hate about powerlifting rulebooks, to some degree, is that there are some rules in powerlifting rulebooks that are there but kind of ignored. And it's like, if there's a rule there, follow it. Like, if it's there but it's allowed to be ignored, why is it in the rule book in the first place? So I try to revisit the APL rule book as often as possible and just go through it with a fresh set of eyes and kind of ask, do we referee this exactly as it's written? If not, what needs to change? If we don't referee it at all, why is it in there to begin with? And remove essentially all the trash. And it's going to take years of refining to get this thing perfect. It's very much a living document, as all rule books should be. Anyway, let's talk through some of these rules. The first one I'm going to bring up is thumb loops on bench press. I think everyone who's been in lifting will agree that this is a dumbass rule. It's not like you're going to lift 20 kilos more on your bench press because you've left the thumb loop on. I don't actually know the origins of this rule. I can only speculate. And this is the funny thing when we look at powerlifting rule books. A lot of that knowledge has been lost. Like, why was it there in the first place? All the people that would have originally written this stuff have kind of moved on. And so you kind of reverse engineer why the rules are there in the first place. So if I think about thumb loops on bench press, technically the thumb loop constitutes part of the wrist wrap. Sorry, thumb loops on wrist wraps, not on bench press. Technically, the thumb loop constitutes a part of the wrist wrap, and the wrist wrap cannot extend 2 centimeters above the wrist joint in most federations. And so if the thumb loop is further up the hand, because it's around the thumb, it's breaking that rule. That would make sense. However, when rules are in the rule book like this, the question should be asked, like, is it creating a problem? Is there some sort of significant advantage for the lifter? Is it posing a disadvantage to other lifters? Is there an actual issue here? Is there a safety issue? If the answer to all of these questions is kind of like, not really, then why is it there? So thumb loops on bench press, some thumb loops on wrist wraps, don't make any sense. That's a big part why, that's a big reason why we removed it from the APL rulebook. And for reference as well, I did a lot of surveys with lifters to see where most people aligned their views on these kind of subjects when I changed the rulebook. Anyway, some people have raised the argument of like, it's dangerous. It could potentially get caught on equipment. And now, so for reference, if I'm to use myself as an example, I haven't used a thumb loop since like 2013. I'm the laziest lifter when it comes to equipment. All my equipment needs to be easy enough to pull on. I'm not messing around with straps and stuff when it comes to knee sleeves. I don't want to fuck around with thumb loops on a wrist wrap. So I just hold it. So my thumb loop just flies there freely. And I get caught in the rack a lot. Like, as in, I'll re-rack the bench press and the bar will land on the thumb loop and I'll get stuck there. It's not really a safety violation. It's not really a safety risk. I'm just stuck there for a second and I just roll the bar and get myself out. The reality of it actually getting caught on equipment, I would say, is slim to none. But I mean, you could argue that that's a relevant point. Anyway, what do you think? Let me know. That kind of ties into my next dumb rule. Now, don't come at me until you hear my explanation. Suicide grip on bench press. Suicide grip is not allowed in most federations. And I'll be the first to admit, APL doesn't allow suicide grip. This was a vote of the people. My personal opinion is different. So suicide grip, for those who don't know, is when you don't have your thumb around the bar. So the bar is essentially resting in your palms. It makes sense for this to be banned from a logical perspective of your thumb's not around the bar. There's a risk of the bar slipping out and falling down onto your face, onto your chest, causing damage, etc. The interesting thing, and again, this is a purely anecdotal personal experience thing. I've been in powerlifting for close to 20 years. I've been heavily involved in competitions of powerlifting for close to 15 years. And in my time, I've seen a lot of drop bench presses, like dropped from lockout to the chest. None of those bench presses I've ever seen dropped, and I'm talking 10 plus, have ever been with a suicide grip. And I've seen lots of people in my gyms bench with a suicide grip, and I've never seen someone drop the bar and bench. Now, that is not the best experience or evidence to suggest that suicide grip should be banned, because, I mean, you could make the argument, well, if suicide grip was allowed and everyone benched with a suicide grip, there might be a much higher instance of dropping the bar on the chest. That makes sense. I can understand that. However, most people who bench with a suicide grip would report that they've never dropped the bar because they learned how to bench with a suicide grip. I mean, I don't know about people listening to this, but I do most of my pressing accessories with a suicide grip. Like all my machine pressing, I do without thumbs these days. So it's an interesting one. I don't necessarily think it's a dumb rule, but it's an interesting rule to pull out. So, and second thoughts, probably didn't need to be in this list. But it's padding out the run time, which is giving you guys more of me. I'm sorry, that's probably not what you want. All right, elbow sleeves on bench press. I think this is hands down one of the dumbest rules that we have. Crazy to me. And it's crazy the cultural impact that it has. So I would love to just to just change the APL rulebook and wake up one day and get Daniel to make a post, elbow sleeves on bench press are now allowed, and just see what happens. Like be able to split test it with the world and see how people respond. Because most people, I think, will respond negatively just because we've been taught that you're not meant to wear elbow sleeves on bench press. I might be totally wrong. Hopefully logic prevails and people are like, well, we wear them on squats. It's basically arm squats. Why can't we wear them on elbows on bench press? So like the argument would be, well, it gives people an unfair advantage. It gives people an advantage. Yeah, so do knee sleeves. That's kind of the point. So you can lift more weight. That's what powerlifting is. So I think it's one of these things where I think everyone would see the logic of, okay, well, we do it with our knees, but we've never done it with our elbows. So then we may as well just keep the sanctity of that and not change it. I'd be really curious to know people's thoughts. I'll do a poll on my Instagram at some stage and see what people think. But I just think it's a blatant contradiction that we have in powerlifting where we allow knee sleeves on squats, but we don't allow elbow sleeves on bench press. I also think it's strange. So in APL, you can wear elbow sleeves on squats. It provides no advantage whatsoever to wear an elbow sleeve on a squat. If anything, it might help lifters that experience arm pain to provide a bit more comfort, which I don't necessarily think is a defined advantage. It's crazy to me that federations don't allow that. And I think a lot of this stuff, again, old white man running powerlifting for a long time, comes down to just like appearances, which kind of goes into the next few rules that I've got here. So the next one is like, in most federations, your soft suit and your socks can't touch your knee sleeves. I've never been allowed to do that. Soft suit has to be like midway up the thigh. If you're wearing knee sleeves on a squat, you can't touch your socks. Then there's this funny contradiction that existed in most rule books and does exist in most rule books, which is you're allowed to wear knee sleeves on deadlifts, but you're not allowed to touch your socks to the knee sleeves, but you have to wear knee length deadlift socks. What do you do? Like that's a strange contradiction. Anyway, it's very weird. It made sense to not have socks touching knee sleeves when the IPF had a rule that you can't have any assistance putting your knee sleeves on. I don't know. I should have checked this before the podcast, but I don't know if they still have that. I think it's removed based on the long sleeved soft suits now, because now people can wear long sleeve soft suits and they can wear knee sleeves over the soft suits. When I say soft suit as well, if you're American, singlet, same thing. When the IPF first brought that out, as in long sleeve soft suits, you weren't allowed to wear knee coverings. So you couldn't wear knee sleeves over your soft suit. And then quickly they changed that because it's just kind of unfair. And it also didn't make sense because when lifters, like say a lifter that's covering for religious purposes was allowed to wear like track pants, or you're not allowed to wear compression tights, but they could wear long pants under their soft suit, they were allowed to wear knee sleeves over their long pants. So didn't really make any sense. So thankfully they've removed that. Anyway, it's just strange. It's like, it doesn't give you any advantage to have your soft suit touching your sleeves. It's literally cosmetic. And so one thing I kept and I liked about the IPL rule book is that they have they teach referees about minor infractions. So minor infractions are infractions that you notify the lifter of after they've done the lift. Because, I mean, like, at the end of the day, powerlifting as a whole, forget refereeing and rules for a second, powerlifting as a whole is about the lifter experience. The rules and the referees are there to create a positive and consistent lifter experience. Maybe not positive in the sense that it's consistent, right? So when we look at something like thumb loops on wrist wraps, if a lifter walks out and they're ready to go, the thumb loop's not providing any conceivable advantage or benefit, and a referee jumps out of their chair, stops them, makes them get off the platform, change that, then get back, they can throw off the attempt completely, which can completely throw off their day. And yeah, on one hand, it's in the rule book, they should know this, but on the other hand, it's a fucking stupid rule. So, like, why are we ruining their day for a stupid rule? So I really like that our rule book stipulates if you see a minor infraction, like the sleeves are touching the soft suit, you let the lifter perform their lift, and then you notify them of the infraction after the lift. So you don't necessarily just red light them for it. You say, look, in the rule book, you're not allowed to do this, fix it for the next one, or I will give you red lights. That makes a bit more sense. And again, you can play the argument of like rules are rules and ref according to the rules, but some rules are dumb. So ideally, in a perfect world, there wouldn't be a stipulation for minor infractions because minor infractions shouldn't be minor infractions. They just shouldn't be rules because they're dumb. All right, anyway, that kind of leads to the next thing around cosmetics, which is pretty much every rule book has a stipulation that a lifter cannot adjust any equipment on the platform besides the belt. So like you walk onto the platform and you're still wrapping a wrist wrap. It's like, no, that's against the rules. It's like, why? Because it looks kind of bad. How does that look any worse than clipping up your belt before you do a deadlift? Like, it's a strange thing. It's just one of these things that is clearly about the look, clearly about the cosmetics, that doesn't make a hell of a lot of sense. And I mean, not every rule, maybe we need rules around cosmetics. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that. I just think it's dumb. Like, it's one of these things where I think if I'm refereeing, having the experience of meet director, coach, lifter, referee, rulebook guy, whatever, having all of these hats that I've worn, if I see a lifter walking on the platform and they're, finalizing the Velcro on their wrist strap, I don't think it is right for me to stop them from doing that when they're not doing anything wrong that can bring disrepute to the sport, that can give them some sort of conceivable advantage. It seems dumb to me that that's a rule. All right. I put this one. So in most federations, I say most federations, I'm pretty sure it's all. I just say most because I don't actually know off by heart every single rule book. In most federations, you can take your shirt off for deadlifts. And in most federations, women can take their shirts off for deadlift, but they have to wear a sports bra. And to me, this is like such an old white man thing. It's like, why do women have to wear a sports bra? Like, men have the choice in most federations if they wear underwear or if they go free balling. But women, it's like, no, absolutely not. No free titties on the platform. No way. You have to wear a sports bra. It doesn't make sense. It's like if a woman wants to go out without a sports bra and run the risk of falling out of their soft suit, why should we have to stop them? Why are men allowed to run the risk of things falling out of the bottom of their soft suit, but women get punished for it? That doesn't make sense to me. It's something that we remove from the APL rulebook because most men are going to wear undies, most women are going to wear sports bras, and most people are in control of their own wardrobe. They don't need an overseeing body telling them how to wear their clothes outside of you must wear this during the performance of the lift being a singlet. So it's a strange one for me. The one I want to finish on is actually not a dumb rule, but something that I get asked about quite a bit, which is why do we have the rule on bar dip? Like if you're pressing up a bench press and the bar dips down a little bit and keeps going, technically it's harder. Like we should be praising that shit. Like, fuck, they got it up. Even though they were about to fail it, they saved it and they got the lift. Fantastic. The problem with that is creating the language to deem whether it's an instance of bar dip or a double attempt. Like at what point is this okay? For example, if someone presses just off the chest and comes down and the bar grazes their chest as part of the bar dip, is that 2 attempts? If someone dips by like 2 inches and keeps coming up, like, is that okay? If it's 3 inches, is that too much? The other thing is, if the bar dips, the spotters take it, but the lifter is confident they would have saved it, who's at fault? The spotters were saving them because there was a clear bar dip. The lifter's claiming that they could have got it. Maybe they couldn't. Maybe they're just using that to advantage because the rule book allows for bar dip now. So there's a bunch of extra stuff that would come with allowing bar dip that doesn't quite make a lot of sense. So that's primarily why I have no desire to put this forward to the people to see if it's a rule that needs to be changed, because I just don't think it is. No, it's never been a rule, and it creates a lot of problems when it comes to practical refereeing. And this is the way we have to look at rule books. It's not just about the rule that makes the most sense on the surface. You have to look at it from every angle. How does this change for the lifter? How does this change for the referee? How does this change for the flow of the competition? What does this actually mean as a whole? What are the flow-on effects? And a lot of these rules do have flow-on effects to some degree. Anyway, hope you enjoyed my take on some dumb rules. Let me know what you think some dumb rules are, because I'm sure there's plenty of them. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.